discussion. So we move on now to our next item, local and regional democracy in Austria. In March 2010, the Congress carried out its first monitoring mission to Austria. The rapporteurs, Mr. Kuhls from Belgium and Mrs. Loizidou from Cyprus, paid a visit to the Austrian capital, Vienna, and St. Pölten, the capital of the land of Lower Austria, following which they presented a draft recommendation on local and regional self-government in Austria for the approval of the Monitoring Committee of the Congress in February 2011. The recommendation was approved following a very interesting exchange of views in the Monitoring Committee and is presented for adoption by the Congress. While Austria is a country with a deep-rooted culture of regional and local autonomy, the rapporteurs have detected a number of areas where further improvement would be most welcome. This being said, as you will see, the rapporteur's overall conclusion was that the local and regional democracy in Austria was in conformity with the norms of the European Charter of Local Self-Government. I will now call on the rapporteurs, and as far as I understand, Mr. Kuhls from Belgium will speak first. I give Mr. Kuhls the floor. We will then afterwards hear from Mr. Loizidou, and following that presentation there will be a debate and opportunity to vote on a draft recommendation. Mr. Kuhls.
Oui, merci Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much,
Madame Loizidou et moi-même nous sommes rendus en Autriche il y a à peu près un an, du 24 au 26 mars 2010, en qualité de rapporteur de ce congrès pour une première visite de monitoring qui était faite en Autriche. Nous voulons vraiment remercier toutes les autorités autrichiennes, les mandataires politiques, les hauts fonctionnaires que nous avons rencontrés pour l'accueil exceptionnel qu'ils nous ont réservé, pour le temps qu'ils nous ont consacré. Nous voulons aussi remercier le professeur Volodine, professeur à l'Université des sciences humaines de Moscou,
is from the Human Sciences University in Moscow, and he was part of the independent working group, and he played a very important role in drafting the report. We're also grateful to Ms. Starr for
Alors effectivement, comme vous l'avez dit, notre impression globale est très positive
our overall assessment is very positive
as a result of our visit to Austria. We're talking about a totally democratic country. The
over 2,500 municipalities in Austria have real competencies, they have real budgets. The Austrian constitution is very explicit in setting out these powers of the municipalities and the regions. It's also a country where dialogue and consultation between the different levels of authority is very much a reality, and the roles of the Austrian Town Association and the Municipality Association is essentially unique in Europe. A number of the people we spoke to in Austria described the system as being cooperative federalism, and I think that that is a very good definition of the system which prevails in Austria. Having said that, unfortunately, we do have to say that not everything is perfect, because one does get the impression that Austria is perhaps a bit more centralized than it might initially appear, in particular when it comes to powers, because the municipalities and the regions do have their own powers, but a lot of the powers that they exercise are not their own. They're actually delegated from the central government or from the federal state, and we feel that they could have more powers of their own. And then there's the degree of fiscal autonomy, which is limited, because it's generally 21% of the resources available to the regions and municipalities which come from their own tax, and the rest comes from federal tax, which is delegated to them, transferred. This means that they don't have greater control over their own resource, although sometimes we got the impression that some people are quite happy with this situation. A third example, the role of the Court of Auditors, the Federal Court of Auditors. When we were in Austria, we were talking about a difference between 10,000 and 20,000 and the competence or the purview of the Court of Auditors. And we felt that the monitoring powers were quite strict in the hands of the Court of Auditors, and that they should have been more at the level of regions over the municipalities. Now, the country has not ratified a series of provisions of the Charter, and in some cases this doesn't matter too much, because the Austrian constitution often steps in, as it were. But there are provisions in the Charter which are not covered at all. When we had the debate in the Monitoring Committee, the colleague from the Austrian delegation underlined that there was a problem in this regard, but some, I'm thinking of Article 7.2, which says that there should be appropriate financial compensation, and so on, and financial cooperation for remuneration for the work that's been done or to make up for gaps and so on. These are provisions which have not been ratified by Austria and therefore not very much put into practice. Then there's the upper chamber of the Austrian Parliament, which is supposed to represent the regions, but in fact that chamber turns out not to have very many powers at all. We've suggested a number of proposals, although, as I've said, generally we're very positive about Austria because of the very broad-based regional and local autonomy. Firstly, we're suggesting that it would be a good idea to pursue the institutional reform process which is underway. This falls under the heading of the Austrian Convention. It's the question of who is competent for at what level of power, and as I've said, slightly shifting the balance is something that we would be in favour of. This is also true of the role of the upper house of Parliament, and I will now leave it to my colleague to spell out some of the other points. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I now call on the other rapporteur, Mrs. Loizidou.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, please allow me now to take over from Mr. Kurz and mention some of the other major points which we would recommend to Austrian authorities. First of all, we believe that Austrian authorities should strengthen the role of the municipalities in the preparation of the financial equalisation law. This could be achieved by introducing a legally binding consultation of the Austrian Association of Cities and Towns and of the Austrian Associations of Municipalities during the negotiation process. Secondly, Austrian authorities should grant to municipalities and the Länder larger tax autonomy, allowing them to raise an increasing amount of own taxes and to make sure that when their competences are extended, this is followed by the allocation of the necessary financial resources. As rapporteur for regional democracy, I paid particular attention to this point. Additionally, the flexibility of municipality associations should be enhanced by abolishing the remaining limitations to intermunicipal cooperation across the borders of the Länder and by increasing the competences of such associations. Austria could also consider modifying the federal constitutional law in order to allow municipalities to participate in the agreements between the Federation and the Länder, foreseen by Article 15A of the Federal Constitution, as this is already the case of the consultation mechanism and the Austrian Stability Pact. We also believe it is the right time for Austrian authorities to reconsider the restrictions on the extent of the Charter articles by which Austria is bound with a view to lifting some or all of them. This could be in the case of Article 11 of the Charter, which in fact is respected in practice in Austria. Colleagues, we are convinced that these recommendations would improve the current functioning of the local and regional democracy in Austria, which already is quite dynamic and progressive. The text of the recommendation presented to you includes a detailed list of suggestions that we hope will be taken into consideration by the Austrian authorities. Dear colleagues, we are at your disposal if you have any questions or clarifications on the text of this draft recommendation. Thank you for your attention.